Welcome back to my channel. I'm Elizabeth St. Hilaire, and today I am doing a Q&A, questions and answers about being a full-time working fine artist. These questions were provided by the folks from my Patreon page. I presented this question to them, a couple of months ago, I guess. Looking for the date on my iPad. Anyway, a couple of months ago, and I did a video for Patreon, but my hope was to answer several of these questions for you on YouTube because if you're new to my channel, maybe you don't know, I am a full-time fine artist. I have no other job. So a lot of times when people comment on Facebook and say, wow, you did that fast, I'm like, well, it's my full-time job. So I worked on it all day for at least 8 hours before I posted it. So anyway, I have been a working full-time fine artist since about 2016. I have a degree in fine art from Syracuse University, but my concentration, my major ultimately was in advertising design or commercial design, commercial art design, because I waffled, I gave in, I caved, I went the commercial route because everyone was afraid that I would starve to death if I majored in painting. So I have the Bachelor of Fine Art with a concentration in advertising design. So I was a graphic artist for over 20 years. I was self-employed, and being a self-employed graphic artist taught me a number of things. It taught me about marketing myself. It gave me the skills, the computer skills and the tools to market myself. It gave me the time to build the fine art business on the side simultaneously with doing graphic design. So because I was self-employed, if I had time in my schedule, I would paint. I started teaching workshops and I would bring my computer with me. So at the end of the teaching day, I would go back to my hotel and do all of my graphic design work in the evening. So it was a lot of work there dually for a long time. But as the fine art started to take off and earn more money, the graphic design kind of went down. And then I got to a pivotal point where I actually stepped away from graphic design completely. And now I am only supporting myself and sometimes my kids, my adult kids. Let's face it, we're still supporting our adult kids. From original sales, teaching, books, what else? Patreon, YouTube, a lot of different little pots of income. If you're not aware, I'm published with Penguin Random House, and then I also have at least 4 or 5 self-published books, and they're all available on Amazon. So I have a lot of sources for revenue as a fine artist, not just teaching and not just painting. Because when one thing is up, another thing is down, and then it changes, and so you always have to be riding the wave, but looking forward to the next opportunity. So that's my mantra. But anyway, here's our questions. Let's see. So I'm going to give you the best questions, and let's see what we've got. Let's see. How do you keep coming up with new ideas and inspirations? You are very prolific. So is it hard to come up with fresh new subjects? And how did you decide to go with gold and acrylics? That's from Jean. So I am very prolific because it is my full-time job, and because I am I love art and I love painting, and it is my passion. So I never mind that it is my job. I work 7 days a week, and I work all hours of the day. So for me, there is no Monday to Friday. That is the only drawback to self-employed. So that all contributes to my being prolific, is all the hours that I do work. How do I, with fresh subjects, I like working in a series. So when you work in a series, like my Wizard of Oz portrait series, for example, you are creating a body of work, and so then you know what's coming next. So I started with Dorothy's shoes, and then I did a portrait of Dorothy, and then I went through all the characters. And so working in a series helps you so that every time you come to the easel, you're not looking at a blank canvas wondering, what am I going to do now? So my Wizard of Oz series spun off into other portrait series in the same style. So now I'm working on a Frida Kahlo portrait in the same style as the Wizard of Oz portraits. And I think that what I'll do with Frida is I am going to do her a couple of different times, because I have learned from experience that working on the same subject, even using the same reference photo and doing different iterations of it, maybe changing the colors or maybe changing the angle, the technique, the application, the materials, you can learn a lot from using the same reference photo and putting a different spin on it every time. So I'm feeling like I might do a Frida series now. So series, definitely a series helps with coming up with fresh new ideas. And inspiration is a huge help. Going to art galleries, going to art museums, taking workshops with other instructors, getting your creative juices flowing, being inspired and motivated by exposure to art. And it can also be theater and music, performing arts and other forms of visual art also inspire me. So I try to be surround myself with inspiration. It seems as though no matter what glasses I have on, I can still never see. But anyway, so Deborah Janelle said, she said, did I seek out the big break? Oh, I didn't answer with Jean how I decided to go with golden. Long story short, when I started hand painting my own papers, which I did as a result of realizing that purchased papers were fading. When I started out, I purchased my papers at the art supply store in the drawers in the back, the decorative papers, and I realized that they were fading. So that was like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I'm selling my work and this is fading. So fast forward, I started painting my own papers, and I chose golden fluid acrylics because they were the main company that had fluids at that time. And the fluid acrylics worked really great for painting paper because when you apply them thinly, they dry really fast, which means you can do a layer and then a layer and then a layer and then a layer without waiting for things to dry. So I was already using golden products. And then in 2018, I applied to their artist educator program and was accepted to be trained by them. So I was trained by them in all of their products. We spent a week in New Orleans being trained, and so that is how I know and use so many of Golden's amazing, wonderful products as a result of that training. But I was already using their product to begin with, which was kind of cool. So it was an easy transition. Okay, so Deborah Jonelle wanted to know about did I seek out the big break or did it just happen? Well, that's a good question to address. In terms of the big break, there was a couple of big breaks. There were a couple of pivotal events that really pushed my career upward, forward. One of them was getting into a major gallery. It's really hard to get into a gallery, or it was, let me rewind. I used to sell only through galleries because there was not as much of an internet online presence in selling art. So my goal was to get into a good gallery or two or three. The big break that I had was that I got into a corporate gallery that had 9 locations across the country, and one of them was in Orlando. So when I got into one gallery, it opened the door for me to get into 8 more, which was an amazing break for me because it was a very upscale, really nice gallery, the Grand Bohemian Gallery. And that was part of the Richard Kessler collection. And Richard Kessler is a huge art collector. So, and I did not seek out that break. I was looking to get into galleries at that time, but I was focusing mostly on local Orlando, and it was a lot of work because there's a lot of competition. But what happened basically was that I went to a trunk sale at the Grand Bohemian Gallery looking for jewelry and frames. They were selling frames, and back in those days, I couldn't afford to frame my work, so I bought things from the frame shop that were cut to the wrong size, or frames from galleries or places that were selling them. And I worked to fit the frames because I couldn't afford framing. So I went down to the gallery's trunk sale to look at their jewelry on sale and to look at the frames. And I met the corporate director of the Kessler Gallery collection. And I didn't know that she was that person. She was just in there straightening up and setting up the cash register. I got there right when they opened, and we chit-chatted, and she was friendly and funny and nice, and there was nobody else in there. And so she asked me if I was an artist, and then she asked me if I had samples of my work. And this was pre-iPhone. So I had business cards with a postage stamp size image of my art that I showed her. And I was still doing graphic design at that time. So I had 4 different cards with 4 different art on them. And I showed them to her. And she stuck out her hand and she said, "Hi, I am Vanessa Hall, and I am the corporate director of the Kessler collection. And I would love for you to bring me 5 originals on Monday morning so that I can look at them in person and we can discuss representation." It was a fluke. But there is no such thing as a fluke, and there is no such thing as a luck. It is preparedness met opportunity. I was prepared. I had the business cards. I had the art. I was ready, and I met an opportunity. She was there in that room alone with no other customers. And when preparedness meets opportunity, that's luck. That's a big break. That's a fluke, whatever you want to call it. But if I wasn't ready and prepared for the opportunity, it would have never worked out. So that put me in 9 galleries across the country. It gave me really great sales. It boosted my confidence with the sales. It gave me exposure. It was a wonderful opportunity. The second pretty big break that I had was obtaining a licensing agent. So I have an agent who handles my licensing. He takes my images and he sells them to wholesale companies that license my image to put it on products, on pillows, on bedding, on wall art canvas, on coasters, on whatever. And that is not financially lucrative really at all, but what it does is it puts my name out there everywhere. So if you Google me, you will find me on Walmart.com, on Home Depot, on Marmont Hill, on Target, on everywhere. It just gave me an amazing internet presence. And the biggest thing that we had going was when there was Pier 1, and Pier 1 had my prints as wall art in their stores and online for about 10 years. And that brought me a lot of success because so many people bought those prints, and so many people looked at my signature and Googled me and found me one way or another. They came to take a workshop, or they wanted an original piece, or they bought a book, or they bought an apron, or they went to my website. So the licensing agent, and he found me. I was in a gallery in Sarasota. It was the first month that my work had hung there. He was standing in front of one of my paintings for a really long time. I introduced myself, like you do when you're in a gallery. "Hello, I'm the artist. If you have any questions, let me know. If you would, I could explain the technique to you, And again, "Hi, I'm Michael Woodward of Out of the Blue. I'm an art licensing agent, and I think that your work would reproduce fantastically well." And then we went from there. I took his card. I didn't hear from him for quite a while. I had to reach out to him consistently. "Hey, remember me? Hey, remember me?" And I was persistent and consistent, and eventually, it took off. And my Robin with the sticks in his mouth was Pier 1's best-selling wall art canvas for a long time. So I always joke and say that there's only 6 degrees of separation between you and someone that owns that print. Serious. It was, that was another great opportunity for me. And then I would say the third Big opportunity for me was that I was always entering juried shows with the Artist Magazine and that group. So Acrylic Artist Magazine, The Artist Magazine, all those magazines that were published by Northlight. And I consistently entered every year. And I ultimately in 2010 won first place in the category of collage and mixed media. And the editor of the magazine called me to tell me that I had won first place. And that was another wonderful opportunity because I didn't give up, because I submitted to those jury shows year after year after year and got nothing, and then got a word of mention in a list without a photo, and then got a little tiny photo. But I didn't give up. I didn't get discouraged, and I didn't give up. I kept on doing it. I kept on spending the money. I kept on submitting the work. And when I got the first place, it was another big deal, because then Acrylic Artist Magazine asked me to write a feature story. I had an 8-page story. I was in some books that Northlight published, like Acrylic, Effects #3 or Textures #2. You remember those books that featured many artists. So I was in those books, and then I was published in more magazines, and then they were contacting me, asking me to write articles for the magazines. So I got published nationally many times as a result of winning that first place and being persistent and not giving up. And then ultimately Northlight asked me to publish my own book. And that was another wonderful national opportunity, because you could get it in Joann, etc. You could get it in Target. You could get it in art supply stores. You could get it on Amazon. So Northlight Books was another branch of all of those magazines. So they all played well together. And so the book brought me more national exposure. And then when Northlight split and the book division went bankrupt, they got absorbed by Penguin Random House. So I'm now published by Penguin Random House with my book from, I think it was 2016. So all of these opportunities, I would say these are probably the 3 biggest big breaks. Deborah, this is a long answer to your short question, but so it wasn't any one big thing. And in addition to those 3 quote unquote big breaks, there have been many, 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 many small milestones that built up to those bigger breaks. So it's been a lot of work. I've pushed a boulder up the hill for a long time, but persistence pays off. So that's a really good question. Wendy said, how did I meet Pamela and start teaching in Italy? So that's a really good question, because that sort of ties into workshop teaching. So of course I wasn't teaching workshops in the beginning. And the first opportunity that I had to teach a workshop was a word of mouth reference. Someone referred me, knowing that me as an artist, to a workshop company that had just started, and referred me and said that I would be a good teacher. Now, at that point, the only people I had ever taught art to was kindergartners through the 5th grade, volunteering at my kids' school. I had never taught art to anyone. And I still, to this day, I'm not exactly sure why Mary Elizabeth referred me. But I am forever grateful, because that workshop company called me and asked me to be their very first ever teacher. Not only did they have a new business, but they wanted me to be their first ever teacher. And they were in Amelia Island, Florida, and I lived in Orlando, so a couple of hours drive away. And I had no idea what I was going to do. But I have learned that the answer is always yes. When you want to be successful, the answer is always yes. Yes, I will teach a workshop. And then when you hang up the phone, you go, okay, now I need to figure out how to teach a workshop. When COVID happened, the Sedona Arts Center asked me if I would teach on Zoom for them. And I said yes. And they said, we don't know how to do Zoom. I said, I don't either, but we'll figure it out. And I was their very first online teacher through which became many online teachers for COVID. So I'm proud to say that I said yes, and I figured it out. So I taught that workshop in Amelia Island, and then those students went other places and told people that they really enjoyed my workshop. That and Amelia Island had me come back for 2 more years in a row. More students went out into the world and told people, other workshop venues, that I was an amazing teacher or that I was worth looking into. And then people started calling me to teach, all because I said yes. And I didn't even know how I was going to teach. But I figured if I could teach little kids that were out of their seats like marbles and were impossible for me to get back in, I could probably teach adults who were paying to be there and who would definitely stay in their seats. So, how I met Pamela to teach in Italy, by then I was already teaching workshops, and the Winter Park Women's Club asked me to give a presentation at their monthly meeting. And I said yes. I had never given a presentation at a monthly meeting. I didn't even know really how I would do it because it wasn't teaching a workshop. It was standing up there and talking about my life as a working artist with a slideshow and trying to be an educational and entertaining person for this monthly meeting. So I said yes. And when I said yes, she said, "Oh, I thought I was going to have to spend more time convincing you." And I said, "No, it's great. I'll do it." So 6 months later, I went down to the Winter Park Women's Club and gave a presentation with slides, and I wore my most colorful clothing and my best jewelry, and I put on my best comedic persona. And after the presentation, Pamela Hack, who brings me to Italy, came up and shook my hand. "Hi, I'm Pamela Hack of Strada Toscana. I do small boutique tours of Italy, and I've been looking for someone to teach an art workshop. Your art and your style and your fashion and your personality would be great for this endeavor." And she said, "I'm booking classes for this year or next year. And I said, I book 2 years in advance. My schedule is full for next year because I book 2 years ahead." And she said, she looked me right in the eye. Well, she's much shorter than me, but she looked up at me right in the eye and she said, "Elizabeth, this is Tuscany. And I said, "You have a point. Let me move some things around." And that is how my first workshop happened with Pamela. I sold it out. And then I went, that started in 2017. I sold it out, and then I sold it out again. And we have limited spots. We can only have 9 because we're in a private villa and we only have room for 9. So, then I said to her, "Pamela, not for anything, but we're selling this out pretty easily. Maybe we should do 2 weeks." And then I started doing 2 weeks, selling them both out. And that is how I get to spend a month or 3 weeks in Italy, because we spread the classes apart and I have some time in the middle to hang around in Italy. So that was another situation where preparedness met opportunity and something amazing was born. So, okay, so that is that question from Wendy. And someone else said that they loved all the questions so far. And let's see. Wendy said, "Just in case you haven't cut off the questions, what is your favorite piece of artwork that you've created?" That's kind of hard to say. I've created, are you ready for this? My art licensing agent, who I've been with for about 10 years now, has about 2,000 images of my work. And I do not give him everything that I paint, because not everything that I paint is going to be something that would work for his purposes. So maybe I've done another 500 to 1,000 pieces. So maybe 2,500 to 3,000 pieces of art in the last 10 years, 15 years. Yeah. So I have a few favorites that I've kept that I haven't sold that hang there here in the house because I liked them too much to let them go. I have a 3 by 4 foot peacock over the TV that is one of my all-time favorites. It's called the Crown Jewel, and it's just, to me, it just came out amazingly beautiful. I've put it in a couple of shows, but never wanted to sell it. Another one is like one of the fashion illustration portraits with this lady with this great look with this red hair and all these flowers on the top of her head. I kept that one and a few others. So some of them I end up keeping just because I never sell them. But some of them I never sell because I want to keep them. So a few. So let's see. I had mentioned some questions that people said that they wanted to know about. I wanted to say, as a point of encouragement, that my very first studio, quote unquote studio, was a drafting table in a closet. Not a walk-in closet, but a bifold door closet with the drafting table that would fold up flat against the wall. And I could close the doors in front of it. But then when I wanted to work, I could bring the drafting table down, out, and work. That was my first studio space. Then I moved into a sliver of a corner of the garage with no natural light, but it was at least a place that I could leave a mess and was a little bit more room than the walk-in closet. But in that space with me was the air conditioning handling unit, and some various other things. But it was at least a dedicated space. Then I moved into a separate building in the backyard because I had, there was a slab in the backyard from a shed that had previously fallen apart. So it was a 10 by 12 foot slab. And my brother came down to Florida and we together built a little building on that 10 by 12 foot slab. And I learned a lot about building and I learned a lot about my brother. He's 9 years younger than me. So we didn't really grow up together, but I got to know him and it was one of the best weeks really of my life for learning how to overcome my fear of the nail gun, of other things, the thing that you hammer to tack insulation, putting on a baseball cap and going to Home Depot with my brother every day and learning more about my brother. It was an amazing experience, and I had a 10 by 12 space. I had no running water. I did have electricity, and I had a window unit air conditioner. I had lots of natural light, and I had a place that I could close the door and leave a mess. But I could also run out there in between graphic design jobs, laundry, making dinner, that sort of thing. So, and then I moved from there to a commercial retail space with my logo on the door in a sort of a strip mall plaza. Now, I never really had any walk-in traffic, but it was an really off-site space. I had to get in the car to go there. But it was big space. 3 times bigger than the 10 by 12. And I also had an adjacent space to me that was empty that I sort of took a little bit of advantage of. So I've had many different versions of studio space. And I will say that anytime you can have a space where you don't have to clean it up, so you're not working on the kitchen table, you can actually leave it there. That is good. That is a beautiful thing. It doesn't have to be a big, beautiful space. I started in a closet. And I still made a lot of art because when you can just have a dedicated space, even the corner of your living room, it's a beautiful thing. So that's how I started. And after the commercial space, I moved into my house in a different house into the sun porch that was closed in off of the kitchen. And that was really nice because I was home when my son was doing his homework and when I had food in the oven. I was right around the corner, and I could go there in my pajamas in the middle of the night if I couldn't sleep or if I was up at 4 in the morning. So I've come full circle, and now since I moved to California, I'm in a bedroom, and it's a very small bedroom, but I have great natural light. And again, it's at home. I can come in my pajamas. I can work for 10 minutes and then go back to the laundry or something else. And I find that being at home is the most productive. And even being in the house is highly productive because I don't have to go across the backyard and put shoes on to get here. So I would say that if you're just using a corner of your dining room and you're in the house, you're in my favorite situation. So, okay. That's my studio. I talked about local and national magazines and how I ended up being a Golden Artist Educator. I attended Syracuse University. I have my BFA from Syracuse University. I think I mentioned that. So we talked about my education. And okay, so Barbara said, did you always love paper, and did you hoard all types of paper, and what did I do before the jelly plate or the gel press came along? Well, that's a good question. So I didn't always love paper, but when I started visiting art supply stores and saw the decorative paper in the back, I started loving that. For the textures, for the patterns, for the embossing, for the metallic, for the inclusions, for the flakes, the flecks, the fibers. And that's why when I started collaging, I was working with that paper. I do have tons of paper. I do hoard paper because when I travel to teach, I go to art supply stores and I find papers that I know that I must have, and then I bring them home and like file them away until I can paint them, because I still buy decorative papers at the art supply store for the flecks, the fibers, the inclusions, the metallic, the embossing, but not for the color. I buy them always in white or natural, white or off-white or natural, and then I paint them. And because I buy them white so that I can paint them everything from yellow all the way down to black. The fluid acrylic and many acrylic pigments are slightly translucent. So if I buy paper in red, I am not going to be able to paint it yellow. I want the paint to be translucent, transparent, to allow the fibers, the flecks, the embossing to show through it. So I want to use a translucent layer of paint. And so I want to buy it in white or natural so that it gives me the most options in terms of colors that I can paint it from light all the way down to dark. So, so before the gel plate came along, and Barbara, this is a great question. I did monoprinting in high school, and we did it on the desk. So we put the paint out on the desk and we put kind of things in it, and we dribbled and splattered, and then we pressed a piece of paper in it. So that was my first monoprinting experience on the desk in high school in the 80s. Then when I was in that separate studio in the backyard, rather than messing up my whole desk, I got a piece of plexiglass, and I was making prints on plexiglass. And then I could just move the plexiglass and have my desk surface be clean, and I could take the plexi outside and hose it down and clean it off. So those two things are hard surfaces. The gel plate squishes, and so it allows you to get better connection between the paper and the paint, especially if you put masking materials in between. So the gel plate really opened up a whole new world. But before that, I was making monoprints on plexiglass or hard surfaces, or I was doing other techniques like splattering, dry brushing, stamping, rolling, and that sort of thing, non-gel plate techniques. Many of which I still use today. So it's kind of it's evolved. Okay, so let's see. So Deborah asked how I became a Golden Artist Educator. So I covered that. And let's see. Okay, so Jeanette said, I would also like to know what things you do to promote your art. Social media is my biggest promotion of my art. I do Facebook and I do Instagram. There are other outlets like TikTok and some other things, but I have decided that I am going to stick with the two that I know, and I'm going to do those two very well rather than spread myself too thin and not do them all very well. Also, you have to consider, where is your demographic? Who is coming to my classes? Who is buying my artwork, and where are they? I think it's a younger audience that's on TikTok than my demographic. I have found that my demographic has become very big on Instagram in the last couple of years, but previous to that, it was mostly Facebook. You have to pay attention to that. You have to know who is your audience. And this is the marketing me speaking, but you have to know who is your audience and where are they, first of all. So mostly social media. Also, as of recent, last couple of years, Facebook wants you to pay to promote or boost your post. And if their algorithm searches and finds that there's anything in your post that suggests that you're selling something, marketing something, giving a list to a website, saying the word YouTube, saying the word for sale or available, or any of those things, they throttle the traffic on that post down because they want you to pay, because they know it's a marketing selling post. So this is it wasn't like that in the beginning, but it is like that now. So now if I say that anything's for sale, it gets throttled unless I pay to boost it. I have paid to boost, but I'm not totally convinced that the audience that it goes to is really my demographic, even though I checked all the right boxes with Facebook for boosting. I made sure it was my demographic boxes. I'm not exactly sure that it really is. So, Jeanette, the best way to combat that is my mailing list. I have a mailing list of people who have subscribed, and they always have an option to unsubscribe. So I hope that the people that are there are reading the emails. And I know that when I send something from my mailing list, it does go to your mailbox. I don't know that Facebook is going to push it to your feed, but I do know that my paid mailing list, and I use MailChimp, that my paid mailing list provider is delivering it to your mailbox. However, there are people who don't unsubscribe and they just delete the emails. So every 6 months, I go into MailChimp and I do a search for anyone who has not opened the email in at least 4 months, and then I take them off the list. So I have a good, true vision of how many people are engaged in the mailing list, and I try to keep those numbers up by encouraging people on social media to be on the mailing list. How do I do that? Sometimes I offer promotions, or I say that things are going to be available to mailing list subscribers first. And when it's something that people are interested in, they subscribe to the mailing list, and then hopefully they'll stay on the mailing list. I try not to bombard people with things on the mailing list, but I am trying to make a living. So if you're on my mailing list and you get too many emails, I am sorry, but I am trying to make a living. I do not have another job, and I get emails from, I won't even say, plenty of advertisers every single day. I don't do that. I try not to do that. So anyway, bear with me on that front, but know that the only way to sell and promote, and that was the question, things to promote your art. I'm looking at my iPad. The only way to do that is to keep putting it out there and keep working at it. I post every day on both platforms, multiple times a day, every day. And if I am going on vacation, which I very rarely do, but I am this summer, I will schedule posts to post while I'm gone. That's another thing, is to pre-schedule posts. So it's a lot of work, but yeah. So let's see. So Karen said, you have definitely found a niche. In the beginning, you did a lot of whimsy, animals with lots of personality. I haven't done animals in a long time, but I did a lot of animals. I had not a Wizard of Oz. I'm getting my series mixed up. I had a Noah's Ark series. Again, working in a series. I was invited to do a solo show of 50 pieces, and I had a year to prepare for it. And I wanted it to have a cohesive theme. So I did a Noah's Ark series. I did 25 sets of 2 animals, male and female. And it was great fun working on that. And so that is where many of my whimsical animal pieces that Karen is speaking of came from. And she said, today you seem to do more realistic with your workshops, faces and flowers. What's next in your life? For those who have taken most of your workshops and follow Patreon, what do you see in your future endeavors to keep you motivated? Well, that's a great question. And to keep you motivated and to keep me motivated, right? I want to have people come back and take a workshop or to stay on Patreon. So where do we go from here? Well, on Patreon, I try to balance between a couple of different things. I do series, so an 11-part or a 12-part series where I take you from a piece from start all the way to finish. But I also do a lot of single tutorial lessons on Patreon. Like I'm getting ready to do an in-depth lesson on carving your own stamps. I've done in-depth lessons on backgrounds. I've done in-depth lessons on all kinds of levels of the process. I am always looking to experiment with new art supplies, and I take other artists' workshops to kind of charge my creativity. For example, I've taken several workshops in watercolors. I learned watercolors in college with my BFA, but I've taken several workshops, and then I've passed on watercolor lessons on Patreon, and I've also added a watercolor workshop to my Italy trip. So I've got 2 workshops in Italy now, watercolor and collage. And Italy is the only place that I'm teaching watercolor sketchbook. So being inspired by learning other media, it's not that I didn't know how to do watercolor, but I just taking a workshop makes me carve out the time to do it and experiment with it and learn new techniques. So I would say that I would like to take at least one workshop a year myself from someone else and see if I can be inspired in other media. Because what I do is mixed media. So adding, I don't see me adding watercolor into collage, but adding some water-soluble materials like Stabilo Woodies, like Derwent Inktense pencils, like Marabou art crayons. These are new things that I've played with to add into my mixed media. And so that kind of keeps me inspired. And I hope it keeps you inspired because the beauty of mixed media is that we can pull in techniques and materials from so many different directions. I've been playing lately with Stabilo Woodies and Posca markers and the Derwent pencils and what else? Pastel that I use like charcoal, the black pastel. So new materials and new workshops. That's how I keep motivated and how I keep hoping to motivate you as students. So for example, I've got I try to do one new workshop idea a year. So what I'm going to be doing in Mexico in January is actually combining 2 workshops, which is kind of a neat idea. So I'm going to combine the portraits with the florals and do a Frida Kahlo based workshop in Mexico where it will be the portrait, but the full floral headdress will incorporate all the lessons and techniques from the floral workshop. So you'll actually be getting 2 workshops in one and working on a Frida portrait while in Mexico. And so we'll be kind of, that'll be brand new. And I have not done it anywhere before, and it will be in Mexico in January. of 2023. So I will put a link below for my website where you can look at my current workshops, and I will put a link for my newsletter so that you can get on the mailing list and be privy to workshops coming up. Also, if you just stumbled across this video and you don't know me or my deal, I do a tutorial video here every Friday. And the questions for this video today came from my patrons on my Patreon page. And it is my patrons from the bottom of my art heart that support these free videos on YouTube. So I do in-depth multi-part series on Patreon, like I said, 1 through 19 on the peacock painting, and I do more in-depth learning. So my patrons help to fund these videos by their subscription over there on Patreon. And if you are not familiar, that link will be below as well. Patreon is a month-to-month subscription. You are only committed for 30 days. As soon as you sign up, you have access to all the archived published material, which goes all the way back to May of 2020. And you have access to everything moving forward, which is a new in-depth tutorial video every week. So you can just go back and refer to previous lessons. You can go through a full portrait series workshop, a full backgrounds workshop, a full gel printing workshop. These are full-length workshops that are available separately online for about $400 a piece, and you have access to them in Patreon for $25 a month. So have a look at that, and I'll put that in the upper right-hand corner and below, so you can't miss it. You can't miss it. If it was a snake, it would bite you. My mother used to love to say that. Anyway, thank you for being here. I know this is a little long, but there were a lot of great questions I wanted to cover about being a full-time working artist. It can be done, but it is a big rock to push up that hill. You have to be willing to work really hard and be prepared for the opportunity to make the magic. So anyway, thanks for being here. Please subscribe and leave me some comments below. I respond to all the comments, and I like to know what you think. So, okay, peace out. Happy whatever day it is. I usually say happy Friday, but anyway, thanks for being here.